How shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they do without a preacher?
I love my preacher, he's a man of God. He watches and prays for each one of us. He preaches the word of God, he always tells the truth. I love my preacher. I love my preacher.
The Bible says how beautiful are the feet of them
that preach the gospel of peace.
I love my preacher, he's the man of God, pastor of our church. He watches and prays for each one of us.
He preaches the word of God, he always tells the truth. I love my preacher.
I love my preacher.
I love my preacher, he's the man of God, pastor of our church.
He watches and prays for each one of us. He preaches the word of God, he always tells the truth.
I love my preacher.
I love my preacher.
He preaches the word of God, he always tells the truth. I love my preacher.
I love my preacher. I love my preacher.
Among the
I
bears,
love my preacher.
Whistle. I love my preacher. I love my preacher. I love my preacher. I just pace. I love my Jesus. I love my
Dear Brother Paul lived in perils as he traveled from town to town. Striped, imprisoned, stoned, beaten with rods, but grace abound. Keeping the churches close at heart, strengthening their faith. Every situation offered thanksgiving and praise. He said, think on these things, whatsoever things are true, honest, just and pure, whatsoever things are lovely and of good report, if there be any virtue, if any, you will find you have better days if you think on these things. We're living in perilous times, a lot of trouble everywhere. Good Lord, for peace in the heart and sweet, sweet prayer. Keeping the mind and soul at rest sometimes can be hard. Faith is put to the test and your spirit put on guard. That's when you think on these things, whatsoever things are true, honest, just and pure, whatsoever things are lovely and of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, you will find you have better days if you think in the field watching sheep or fighting battles for the Lord. Hiding in caves, running night and day with pen and sword. David kept a song in his heart, the scriptures held dear. Praying, meditating, leading God's people with cheer. He would think on these things, whatsoever things are true, honest, just, and pure, whatsoever things are lovely, and if good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, you will find you have better days if you think on these things. Bum, ba-da-dum, if you think on these things.
The poor man Lazarus lay at the gate of the rich man's house every day. One day the angels came and took him away. When the rich man died, he lifted his eyes, looked across the gulf that is so wide. He saw Lazarus rich in paradise. I'm a poor, poor, poor rich man. I've got riches that this world can't understand. My Father, He owns everything. He meets my every need. I'm rich in love, I'm rich in grace, I'm rich in mercy, I'm rich in faith, rich in the blessings of God. I'm a poor rich man. Moses grew up in
Something happened when he preached. In my heart I was receiving. He said, do you believe? And boy, my heart started leaping. Before I knew it, I started calling on the name of Jesus. And I know that I love him. And now there's peace down in my heart. There's love in my life. And I know I belong to him. I can't explain what he's done for me. Can't you see that I really truly love him? And what he's done for me, what he's done for me, what he's done for me. Now I'm living my life for him, and I'm not going back. Nothing compares to this life I have now. I'm so glad that I am his. And now there's peace down in my heart. There's love in my life. And I know I belong to him. I can't explain what he's done for me. Can't you see that I really truly love him? And what he's done for me, what he's done for me, what he's done for me. Something happened when he preached. In my heart I was receiving. He said, do you believe? And now I truly love him. And what he did for me, what he's done for me.
Hello, church. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Preacher asked me if I would go ahead and do my testimony tonight. So, a little nervous because I'm not used to talking on TV. But anyway, I just want to go straight to the night that I got saved. And that night I was very, very, very angry. Full of hate towards someone, and just before the service started, and so angry that I went back to I moved from my front pew all the way to the back to get away from certain people. So anyway, Brother Jay, when he started the services, he didn't start with the preaching message. He started with the invitation, and he said, will you follow God whether you feel him or not? And that was the invitation. And that was it. I mean, there was no preaching, no singing, no nothing. He just started with that. And here I am on the back pew full of hate and anger. And the whole church went down there. Went down to the altars. Filled the altars up. The whole church said nobody was there in the pews but me. I was the only one. And I was sitting back by the back door and contemplating about leaving. And because I was so angry. And so here's this invitation. Will you follow God whether you feel him or not? And I couldn't even respond to it because I was so angry. So then the preacher, in a few minutes, he reads out of Isaiah. The verses about, in chapter 1, about, come now and let us reason together. Though your sins be as scarlet, They shall be as white as snow, though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool. And I knew about reasoning because I'd been in trouble so much up until this night, different times. And every time the preacher would pray with me, I had to reason. I had to reason with the scriptures and the preacher and so forth, and with the Lord. And but I knew the Lord was reasonable because he always helped me. But the part of that verse that got to me was the next two verses where he read about if you'll be willing and obedient, if you be willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured. And that's what really got me. Here I was fighting inside my heart. Be willing and obedient, eat the good of the land. Refuse and rebel, and you'll be devoured. And my sin had such a habit of controlling me and taking over me. That was my fear, that I would be devoured by my own sin. So the fight was going on, whether to go out the door, run out the door as full of hate and anger as that I was, or to be willing, obedient, and yield and come and reason with the Lord. And I knew that was a choice. And the only word there is to describe how I got down from my pew all the way down to the altar was the grace of God got me down there. And when I stepped out of the pew and started to go down there, I just broke. I let go of everything. I let go of the hate. I let go of the anger. I just wanted help. And so I got down to the altar, and the weight of my sin, I carried it all the time. I'd wake up in the morning with it. I'd go to bed at night with it. It'd be with me through the day. The weight of the guilt of the wickedness of my sin was just always on me. But at this moment, it was heavier than it had ever been. It was just crushing me all the way under. And I looked up. It was so heavy. I looked up at one point. Here I was just crying. I was so broken. And I lifted up, and I looked over to the left, because I was at the end of the altar on the right end. So I looked to the left, and the whole church was there. And inside my mind, I was just screaming out, "Church." I didn't do it vocally, but I did it in my mind. "Church, pray for me. I cannot get help. Every time the Lord helps me, I can't stay right. I can't get help. I need help. I need deliverance from this wickedness in my heart." So Brother Jay, he was kneeling right across from me, and he opened up the scriptures to Ephesians 2. We'll hope I'm right. My mind's not really good, but Ephesians 2, and he had me reading out of it, and he wanted me to read it. He didn't read it to me. He wanted me to read it. So as I read it, the first few verses were just describing me exactly, and the wickedness of my heart, and the fleshiness of my whole being, and how the devil was my father, and he had control of me, and it was all me. It was terrible, and so it got the weight of the sin kept worse and heavier and heavier and heavier, and I just didn't think I could bear under anymore. But then by the time I got to the verse of where it says, "For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it's the gift of God." Well, being the mental person that I was, I wanted to figure it out on my own, what grace was. And I stopped all of the work that God was doing. He was moving in my heart, the brokenness, all of that he was using the scriptures, and his spirit was working on me. And I just stopped it, and I said, "What's grace?" And it wasn't a question of like a faith question, I want to have faith. It was trying to figure it out in my mind mentally what faith was. I wanted to explain to me what it was so I can say, well, this is what faith is. It had nothing to do with believing God. And so Brother Jay, he just shut the Bible, did not answer my question, and he said, "Will you put it?" And about a week before this night, Brother Jay had preached a message about put. And the whole idea was putting everything upon the Lord, leaving it all with Him, laying it all on Him, and leaving it with Him. And I understood that. It's something about the way my mind works about organizing and putting things in place. Put made sense to me. It was a message I could actually lay hold of back then. I didn't get saved, but I could lay hold of it. So when he shut the Bible now and said, will you put it? And I was looking at him, and it hit me. All these times for the past few months that I would get in such bad shape and bad trouble with my own sin. And Brother Jay and the church would pray with me and work with me, and I'd get some help. But it wouldn't last long. I'd go back to it again. I'd get in trouble again. And then I'd go, and then the church and Brother Jay would pray with me, and they would help me. I had all confidence in Brother Jay's praying. All confidence that he could pray me out of my bad situation again, and I'd get some help. But this night, I knew he could not help me. It hit me. I said, preacher can't help me. Inside my heart, I'm thinking, he can't help me. And that's the first time I realized that this is too big. I've got to put it with God. And so I have no idea if I prayed, what I prayed, if I did pray. I just know at that moment in my heart and my mind, I put it all on the Lord. In my thinking, my emotions, my heart, the whole thing, I just let go. I let go of my hate. I let go of my anger. I let go of all the guilt and the sin. I let go of trying to figure things out. I let go of trying to stay right. I let go of everything. Anything that was there, I just let go of it all and laid it on the Lord. And He took it. I did not know how much He took that night, but He took it all. I laid my whole self on Him, and He took it all. And that night I went to bed, and I knew I'd gotten help. You remember I told you I had gotten help times before when Brother Jay would pray with me and everything, but I knew I got a lot of help. And so I went to bed that night, and I thought, oh, it's still there. I got a lot of help, and it's still there. Oh, Lord, please don't let me mess it up this time, because it'd just be a day, maybe two, and I'd be messed up all over again. So the next morning I woke up, and I said, oh, it's still there. Still there. Oh, Lord, thank you for the help. Don't let me mess it up. So then that night I went to bed, and this went on for a week. Every night, every morning, I'd be saying, it's still there. And during the day, I'd be just looking and thinking, it's still there. I can't believe it. I got a lot of help. And it was the biggest help I'd ever gotten before. So after a week of doing all this, and I'd be at work. I remember sitting at work one time and sitting down, and I was sitting there. I was kind of trying to look inside myself thinking, it has not left me. It is still there. And one day I was on my lunch break, something similar to the same thing. Actually, what it was, a thought came to my mind. What are you going to do if you die? And I stopped, and it really didn't alarm me, but I just stopped and thought about it. I thought, well, I put it, and I trusted the Lord. He's going to take care of it. So I got a lot of help, and I'm just going to trust the Lord that He's going to take care of everything. So anyway, after a week of this, I asked Brother Jay to come over, and Brother Bill and Sister Patsy and Sister Pearl, they could, but they could not. So they came over to the house where I was living at the time with someone, and I said, I want to tell y'all what's going on with me. And I don't want y'all to say anything, because Brother Jay had told me all these months that I was in such bad fix. I said, I want to ask you something. When I get saved, will I know it? And I said, I don't want anybody to tell me that I'm saved. I want to know I'm saved. And he said, yes, you will know it. Of course, all I knew was I got a lot of help. So I began to tell Brother Jay, I said, I don't want you telling me anything. I want to tell you what this week has been like. And I said, I used to be so fearful at night. I'd be so fearful at night. In fact, I would sleep with my Bible. I would just shake. I was so fearful before. I'm not fearful anymore. Then I'm staying right. I could never go more than about 2 days, and I couldn't stay right, and I'd be doing wrong again. I said, but I've stayed right all week long. I've never gone that long. And I said, then the hate that I had was gone. The hate that I had, it was just gone. And I said, I've got a lot of help. And I said, this is the most help I ever got. What is this? So Brother Jay had Brother Bill turn over to the verse where it says, talking about the Lord, He hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. And I said, if that verse is saying what I'm saying, I think it's saying I'm saved. That means I'm saved. Because I had the power to stay right. I had love now that I didn't have before. And I wasn't fearful anymore. And Brother Jay said, well, looks like it. But anyway, the scriptures showed me that I was saved. Just like when anyway, when I was looking about trying to figure out whether I was saved or not months before, it was the scriptures that showed me I was not saved. And here, because I had so much hate in my heart, and the scriptures in John, 1 John, talking about if you have hate for your brother in your heart, you don't have the love of God. You don't know God. God don't know you. And so here's the scriptures now telling me I'm saved because I had love now and had power to stay right, and I didn't have fear anymore. So anyway, I did not realize too the scriptures till later that the scriptures talk about the Lord is my helper. And so that great help that I got, that was Him, and that was His help. And one of the expressions I made back then was, when I got saved, was I felt like I was one with someone. I didn't know how to explain it, but I felt like I was, like when people talk about being married, and that time I wasn't married. And about how people talk about, the scriptures talk about two or one. And I said, I feel like I'm one with someone. And then I've understood later, you're one with the Lord. The Lord's one with you. So anyway, I think that's it. I want to thank the Lord for saving me. And it's so huge and so big. I never feel like I do the Lord justice. When I tell my testimony, ever do I feel like I do Him justice. Because the work that He did for me, my debt was so great. But where sin did abound, grace did much more abound. And His grace washed it all away. His mercy and His love, His payment. And I thank Him. I love Him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I love you, Lord. Love you, church.
Hello, everybody. Oakcrest Baptist Church and all the friends. This is something new for me. I'm not used to video stuff and technical stuff. But anyway, what I'm going to do is just give you my testimony. That's what I was asked to do. I guess to start off, I would like to say, one day this week, I was heading to my first job at work. And I was just thinking about the things that I had seen on the news, the things I've been hearing, the state of our country, the state of our world. And I was talking to the Lord about it, and I said, well, looks like everything's gearing up. You're fixed to come back, take us out of here. I said, but I ain't worried, because if you do that, I'm going to heaven. And if I die, I'm going to heaven. I'm not worried about that. And then the thought come back to my mind what Brother Bill has often said about Brother Dole Turner. Said he'd sing that song about that deep, settled peace in my soul. And I started singing it. I said, I don't even know the words to it. That's the only words I know is I've got that deep, settled peace in my soul. And I used to be a time I didn't have that deep, settled peace. And because I grew up in church, made many professions all along my life, from the time I was a kid till through high school. I joined the Air Force, and I still go off somewhere to go to a church somewhere and make another profession. And got married, and we was in Texas back then. I made professions then, but my life never changed. I mean, I might have changed for a week, maybe 2 weeks, something like that, at the most 2 weeks. But I was always right back where I started, or even worse. But I just couldn't seem to get things right. And we moved to the Philippines with the Air Force, and there's a lady come knocking at our gate, and she happened to be the wife of an independent Baptist American missionary in the Philippines. She invited us to church, so we went and got over there and did the same thing. Talked to the preacher there, and he asked me about my salvation. If I ever had an experience where I had been, I guess I must have told him that I had been saved at one time. I told one preacher that, the one that married us. He asked me if I was saved, and I said, well, I used to be, but I ain't anymore. And anyway, I don't remember exactly what come up or how that happened, but I told him about a time when I was 17 years old, when I'd gone to an altar, and I'd prayed, and I'd cried, and I called myself getting saved, because I really thought everything was okay, but it didn't stick. And then I found out here that he said, well, then you're still saved, because you were saved back then. You're saved now. Well, I don't know. It took me a little while to catch on to that. I was living like the devil, and that's to be saved and living like the devil too. I thought, well, I don't know about all that. It ain't the way I was raised. I wasn't brought up like that at all. But anyway, it went on further. We moved back to the States, got into another church, and a big church over in North Carolina. And the thing that they seemed to push was two things. One of them was being saved, and the other one was soul winning. And anyway, got tired of the Air Force while I was over there, and I quit there. Still going to church. We moved back to Arkansas after a while and got into the same kind of church there, independent, fundamental Baptist, King James Bible believing, and it was still get saved and go soul winning. Okay, so we did my best to do all this stuff and called myself being saved, but then a visiting preacher stopped by, and he preached about this one thing thou lackest. I remember it. His preacher's name, he was from Oklahoma. I remember him, and I remember what he preached. And I went to the altar that night, and I prayed, and I cried, and I gave up some sin. And my life did change right then. I started doing things different, thinking different, going different, reading different, watching different TV, different music. I got into the church thing. Started going out on visitation. I went back driving the church bus over there. This in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And that was in 1992. And then later on that year, I got to looking at my life and think, what happened to me? I'm different. Thought back to it, and I went back to that night when I went to the altar, and I thought, well, I must have got saved that night, because I'm not like I used to be. And then what I did after that, I told my preacher, and he said, well, and I guess he agreed with it enough that he baptized me anyway again. I've been baptized in the Philippines, now I got baptized here. And then the preacher said, and a little while later, I told him I thought I was called to preach. It thought in my mind, I'm called to preach. And anyway, so he thought, well, we need to find a Bible college. So we started looking, and then we had another preacher come by our church, and he told us, they did a revival, and he told us about a Bible college over in Memphis, Tennessee. And they was given the first year free tuition if anybody could come to their college. So we come over and looked at it and visited with them for a Sunday, and that would have been in like 93, summer of 93 on Father's Day. I remember that. It was Father's Day weekend we came over to visit. And anyway, so we moved to Memphis in August of 1993 to go to Bible college. And we got down there, and it was the same thing. It was a great big fundamental independent King James Bible believing Baptist church that pushed soul winning. and salvation to anybody who would agree that Jesus died for them, that he rose from the dead, and do as best as they can to trust him, and they were saved. Whether you're 3 years old, 5 years old, 100 years old, didn't matter. And all you have to do is change your mind from unbelieving to believing. So anyway, I thought, well, I'm saved. I'm called to preach, and I was doing good. I was doing fine. We was going to Bible college. I was working at night and wearing myself out, and I got tired. I got sick and tired, and I started looking for a ministry to get in, anything to get me out of there. And the thought come to my mind, Montana. So I said, oh Lord, we're going to Montana. It gets cold up there. So I told the wife, and we started going out on trying to get some support to get us to Montana. But anyway, we got to Montana to build a church for the Lord. And then we had got to know Oakcrest before we left. And while we was up there, Sister Tina called Kathy and told her, said, we're in revival. There's folks getting saved, and it's amazing. And Kathy told me when I got home from work, and my stomach just churned. I said, oh my, we got to go to Memphis. So we packed up in a little minivan that we had gotten from another preacher that had come up there, and he'd quit and moved off. We got his minivan, and we packed that thing up, and we drove to Memphis, to Oakcrest Baptist Church. And this was in May of 1997. And we came to that meeting, and because I knew we needed something. I needed something bad. So what I did is I went to the altar, and I prayed, and I felt the conviction, and it was just awful inside. And I pray and cry and weep and pray. And finally, I just went back to what I had been taught all these years. Believe God and ask him to save you, and that's it. If you ask him, he will, because he will turn nobody away. So I did that. And we left to go back to Montana and made it to Marion, and I couldn't go. There's something bad wrong inside of me. So we turned around, came back, and one more night of meeting, I got in the altar again, did the same thing again. And finally I got up, and we got in the van. We drove back the next day, I guess it was, whenever we did. We headed back to Montana. We got back up there. But before we left, I told the church, I said, well, I've gotten saved, and we're going to come back, and we'll go to church here if y'all will have us. And everybody said, come on. So we went back to Montana, stayed up there, and finally I turned everything over to somebody else. And, we didn't even have a church going. I told the people that we did have, they'd go to one of these other churches. So they went there, I guess. I haven't heard from them. But anyway, we got back down here in August 97. Was that 23 years ago this month? Hallelujah. But anyway, we got in down here, and everything was fine. I was mad. I got mean. I got mad, and I didn't understand things. I kept under conviction. My old sins was bothering me. And I convinced myself that I had been saved already back in 92 and gave up that 1997 profession. And it went on that way for, I guess, 6 years. Up till Brother Shock came in on Labor Day weekend of 2003. And we started in the meeting. And here I am, thinking I was a preacher, thinking I was saved, thinking I was doing great and wonderful. And I was shouting and singing and preaching and having a good time with it. I thought everything was all right. Except deep down I knew something was missing, something wasn't right. But after almost a year of that meeting, almost every night during that year, the preacher preached in, I think it was July of 2004, out of Psalms 18, the Lord God will light your candle. Ooh, buddy, did I find out about that. But anyway, I knew my candle wasn't lit. And I overheard the preacher talking to somebody else in the dining hall about that question came up of if a church preaches this doctrine that where you just repeat a prayer and tell them they're saved with no repentance, nothing like that, is that church, do they have a candlestick? And that bothered me so bad because that's where I had made my profession back in 92. And the next 2 months from the end of July of 2004 till the end of September 2004, that 2 months was extremely difficult. I would go to the altar and pray, and it's like the Lord saying, "You're not saved." And then I'd get up and go to work the next day and convince myself that I was already saved. And then the next night, go through the same thing again. This happened over and over and over. And then Sister Pearl got saved, and that threw me for a loop. And as soon as she made her profession, I was critical of everything I heard from the pulpit. I was troubled inside, and it liked to kill me. I was so mad, and I was fighting God every step of the way. He would convict me at church and during the preaching, and I would fight him. I'd go to the altar and tell him I need to be saved, and then I'd fight him when he told me I wasn't saved. And this went on. It was just crazy. I couldn't believe God. I just want to fight all the time. But then, during September, Kathy got delivered, and that made things a whole lot better, at least for her. I was still miserable and fighting all the way. And then it come toward getting on late in September, and I couldn't get saved. Just could not get saved. And I gave up. I remember going to the altar when Brother Bill was preaching for Sunday school one more Sunday morning. I stayed in the altar that whole time. Through the time in between, I stayed there for the preaching. And after the preaching, I just gave up. I said, that's it. I cannot be saved. God will not save me. He don't even want me. So I said, that's it. I quit. I ain't going to try no more. I'm not going back to church anymore. I went home, kicked back in my recliner. I was just going to watch a NASCAR race and just quit. And Kathy followed me home, and she leaned over on that chair and started crying on me and begging me just to believe God. Just believe God. Give him one more chance, please. And okay, I got up and went back to the church with her. I don't remember if I ate lunch or not. I don't know. Things get foggy after a few years, especially. Your mind kind of goes a few places like that. But that night, I went back into the altar, and I prayed, and I prayed, and I prayed. And I begged God to forgive me. I begged him to save me. Have mercy on me. And I couldn't get anywhere. And so I gave up. There was 3 of us in the altar that night, but I gave up again. I looked up from where I was kneeling at that altar. I looked up, and there's Dr. Shock sitting right up there on the podium area. And I was broke. I was broke so bad inside. I hurt so bad inside, and I just threw my hands up. I said, that's it. God don't want me. He does not want me. So I got up, and I walked back to the back of the church, back by the water fountain. And I remember right then it just felt like, for the first time ever in my life, I knew I was lost. I'm going to hell, and there is nothing I can do about it. I cannot do. I did everything I know to do, and I can't do anything. And I'm going to go to hell. And I walked back over to the corner, got on my knees, stuck my head down in the corner at the floor, and just begged God one more time, Jesus, have mercy on me, please. And it felt like the flames of hell was wrapping up around me. It got hot back there. I felt like I was just flushed and hot. But I got up, and I walked back up to my pew. I stood there by my pew, and church, there's a whole lot of church people still there. And I told them exactly what's on my mind, what was going on, that I'm lost. I cannot get saved. God don't want me. And Brother Bill was sitting up there by where the choir was up there, and he looked at me and he said, Brother Jim, I love you. I felt love for the first time ever like that in my life. I had never felt that before. And Sister Becky told me, she said, well, you can get some help. You're getting to that place where you can get some help now. And, well, I got some help. Not that night, but I kind of knew in my heart that it will be okay. It's going to be okay. We went over to the dining hall that night and was talking, and the preacher was talking, and he made the I don't know what you'd call it, a parallel or whatever. He said, it's just like there's 3 brand new Cadillacs just waiting to be picked up. And we was heading out, and I walked out into the parking lot with him, and I was, preacher, am I one of those Cadillacs? I felt good. I felt I could get some help somehow. Anyways, I believed I could get saved. I believed that I could. Didn't believe I was, but I believed I could. And the next morning was Monday, and I didn't go to work. I called in. I said, I'm sick. I can't come to work. And I was sick. I was about to die. But I was up, and I read my Bible, and when it got late enough in the day, I went to the dining hall and sat down and talked to the preacher a while. And we had just reading Bible and just talking, fellowship time. And then we went to prayer meeting, our noon prayer meeting. And it got on pretty heavy in there. It got pretty loud in there. I was in the altar, and I got up under the altar, and I was begging and pleading with God to have mercy on me and save my poor soul. Because my old sins, they was just plaguing me, and I was tired of it, and I just needed some mercy. And preacher was praying something about a baseball game. I don't remember what it was exactly about, but I saw myself as being up to bat. And I batted at the ball, knocked the ball clean out yonder somewhere, and I was running them bases, but it's like it got silent. Peace come over my soul. It got quiet, and nobody's cheering anymore. But back in the background, I could hear, I mean, the church was going on. They was praying. There was people praying and shouting, and it was just having a big prayer meeting. But sometime during that altar time, and I was down there, I raised up because everything just hushed. The condemnation that was on me for all of my past sins was gone. No more condemnation. No more noise. No more arguing. Nothing but love and peace. And I raised up, and I leaned up on the altar, and I was just there. And the preacher come over and sat down right beside me. And I looked up at him, and I said, Preacher, I believe God. And he patted me on the back and said, let's go have a glass of tea. So we got up, and we walked out the door, and we went to the dining hall, and we had a glass of tea. And I have not been the same since that day. I have that deep, settled peace in my soul that never lasted before. I mean, maybe a week I had some kind of peace, and then I had a forced peace for 6 or 7 years while I was here at Oakcrest, while I was a lost preacher. I forced that peace, but it wasn't real. Because that nagging sin and condemnation was always on me, that I couldn't shake it. But this day, that condemnation was lifted and gone. Jesus took it all away, forgave me of all my sins, and I have never been the same since. And not one day, not one time, have I ever doubted that I'm saved. That has never happened to me before. But I thank God, I thank this church, I thank our preacher for not telling me that you're saved, you prayed a prayer, you're saved. I thank God he didn't tell me that. I thank God our preacher let God tell me. Amen. Thank you. I love you, church.